Welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining us today on our Facebook Live with Awit Dalusong. We are so excited to have Awit here with us today. You probably have seen her face. She is one of our Captain Cadre leaders. And what we're finding as we've started these conversations with Captain is we have a lot of autism heroes among us, and Awit is one of these people. And I'm so excited to share this conversation with Awit today with everybody. She really has an amazing life story, which you're going to get to hear a little bit more about. But before I do that, I'll introduce myself. My name's Heather Morin, and I'm also one of the Captain leaders. And I have the pleasure of working with Awit. We partner on all of the fun social media and spirit activities that you see, along with some of our other leadership members. And then I will let Awit say hello in just a second. Welcome, Awit. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Thank you, Heather. Welcome, everybody. My name is Awit Dalusong. I am one of the OG Captain leaders. Actually, from the inception of Captain, I was already part of it. So I'm glad you could join us today.
Great, thank you. So just to give you guys a little bit of background on Awit, her official title is she's an intensive behavior intervention manager in the Riverside County Office of Education. And Awit has many things that she does within Riverside County. I recently was presenting at CASP and I ran into some of her colleagues who have the same level of adoration that we all have for Awit, where she works and where we get to work with her in Captain. But the thing that we are going to focus on today that's really exciting is that Awit recently had the opportunity to write a book chapter in a book called Life After Lockdown. Just going to hold it up for us. You guys can see it through our virtual background.
Hard. It should be there somewhere.
There you go. Yeah.
Okay.
So we're going to be talking a little bit about that and learning about Awit's family experience as they went on a long road trip, and then what brought her to this point. So just to start us off, Awit, do you want to tell us about how you got involved in this book? Like, how did you become an author? I'm sure that you didn't think that that was in your path. So how did that come? How did that come to be?
So the folks who conceptualized the book Life After Lockdown are very close to my heart. There are 4 editors. One is Dr. Rebecca Silva. She was the one who actually hired me to be part of Riverside County Office of Ed. I was literally fresh off the boat from the Philippines. I had no references. I applied to be part of RCOE. And she just trusted her gut and said, okay, I think you're going to be a good fit for the autism program. So she hired me. And then before she retired, she actually handed over the intensive behavior program to me. So I now had that IBI program for RCOE. And then one of the other editors, Ruth Price-Tash, was actually Ethan's preschool teacher.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah, we call her the Autism Whisperer. She started the Reach Autism program for RCOE from the ground up. We started with 2 autism classrooms, and now we're up to like 30, 35 classrooms. And so she was the one who called me last spring to invite me to become a contributor for the book. And then there are 2 more editors. Renee used to be my son's preschool teacher. And Carol used to be one of the leaders for the Region 10 Autism Committee. So how I got involved with the book is because I know people. I did not know that Temple Grandin, Stephen Shore, Tony Atwood would also be contributors to the book. So I do not feel worthy at all, but I am extremely grateful for the opportunity.
Wow. And how did you, I'm just curious, when somebody asked you to write a chapter in the book, if someone asked me to do that, I would like remind them that I don't think that I have the competence to do that. So how did you feel when you had to write a chapter in a book? Were you nervous about it, or what was that experience like?
The thing with me is it's hard for me to say no. And I trust Ruth with all my heart. And she was California Teacher of the Year finalist and graduated from Stanford with a degree in I believe, English. So I'm in good hands. So I think I should be able to write a book, and she's going to help me, make it pretty and nice.
Wow. Well, that's amazing. And I'm just curious, did you just like sit down at a computer and start typing it out, or how does one go about writing a chapter in a book?
So I did ask her because she said I wanted not your clinical, your education, hat writing the book, but I want to have you write a book with your husband Edward and give the perspective from a parent. So I sat down with my husband Edward and we said, and it was just honestly the early chapter that we wrote was very clinical in nature. It really didn't pass the Ruth standard. So I had to like revise it close to the publication of the book. I'll
Okay.
tell you more about that later.
Okay, sounds good. Well, I think one of the really special things I've learned about you, Awit, when we've had the opportunity to get to know each other over the last few years is that you have two worlds that very much integrate, but also you experience them very differently. You're a professional who works with individuals with autism, ranging from, very severe ends of behavior and autism spectrum disorders to the other end of the spectrum. And then also you're a mom. And being a mom sometimes is different when you're working with your own children than when you're working with children in a school. So just to help us understand the context of the book a little bit, can you tell us a little bit about your story and how you went from being a mom and from what you were doing for work then into this role and this current life that you live as a professional now as well?
Yeah, for sure. So it's a long story. So let me start with I have a PhD, my husband has a PhD, but our concentration wasn't really in special ed. My PhD is in post-secondary education because my family owns a college back in the Philippines. So my parents wanted to invest in my husband and myself because they knew that, as family members, you're going to be here for the long haul. You're not going to leave us. So we're going to send you to Canada, take your PhD there, and then come back and help with the family business.
Mhm.
And then we did that. We lived in Canada for 5 years, fulfilled the dream of my parents to have, a husband and wife team with PhD degrees. And then the funny thing is, I'm not sure if it's funny, but when we returned to the Philippines ready to help with a family business, about 6 months later, Ethan was diagnosed with autism. So that was in 2004. And back then, Heather, the statistics was like it's
Mhm.
1 in 750 with
Yeah.
autism. And then like a year later, it became 1 in 400, 1 in 450, until it became 1 in 250. And then we were based in the Philippines back then. There's not a lot of, there weren't 28 evidence-based practices back
Right.
then. So it was just, the gold standard of ABA, which
Right.
actually we did get good ABA services in the Philippines in the beginning. But with the explosion of the autism diagnosis, what happened was a lot of the good therapists were relocating to the United States, to
Mhm.
Canada, to the UK, or even Singapore and Hong Kong, because, greener pastures. Can't
Mhm.
really blame them. So we were left with a 2-year wait list for a speech therapist for Ethan. And a lot of the good ABA therapists started disappearing. So we decided that, it's probably best to migrate to the United States to make sure that Ethan gets the best possible interventions. And we tried to look for good schools for him there when he was, young,
Yeah.
like a toddler. Nobody would accept him because nobody knew how to deal with, a moderate to severe type of an autism diagnosis. And the
Wow.
good news, the good thing is my family was actually petitioned by my uncle back when I was in high school, and both my children, Colleen and Ethan, were born here. So living in the United States was really part of our options, which
Mhm.
was really a blessing. So
Mhm.
yeah, that's the story. That's why
Wow.
we
What a
packed our
huge
bag.
change. So you went from you're going to run the family business to navigating services for your own child with autism to uprooting everything and
Mhm.
relocating to California. And I think that that's poignant when talking about this traveling book, because traveling's not entirely new to you. It's something that you've done. But how did you guys end up specifically in Riverside? And then how did you end up specifically in your role in Riverside?
That's another funny story, Heather. So literally, my husband and I spread a map of the United States on the dining table. That's the true story. And we're like, okay, where do we want to live? And since we lived in Canada for 5 years in Edmonton and Alberta, if like the weather right now, we were looking at the hockey game last night or the other night, it was like minus 8 degrees right now, and it's just November.
No need to experience that.
So we're like, okay, no snow, nowhere cold.
Yeah.
We're gonna settle somewhere warm. Back then, I think Sleepless in Seattle was actually one of those movies that was out. And I've always wanted to live in Seattle, but it's raining like, 90% of the time. So we're like,
Yeah.
okay, not Seattle. What about California? Because I do have an aunt who lives in LA, and we have good friends who are nurses who are always in constant communication with us. And they were saying, there's this up and coming town called Temecula. It's like the wine country in Southern California. You want to probably explore that. And so we went to the United States, looked at, Murrieta, Temecula area, and we said, yeah, let's settle here. So that's how I got to Riverside.
Oh my goodness.
It was just looking at a map, and wherever it was warm, that's where we chose to go.
Sticking your finger on that spot. Yeah. And then did you become a BCBA because you were curious with the individuals who were working with your son, or like how did that come about in conjunction with your own child?
Yeah, so actually, like what I said, my background is not on special ed at all. I did not know anything about autism when Ethan was diagnosed. I thought in the beginning, Heather, like he was lining up his shoes in the garage.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that, oh, look at him being so organized. I did not know that that was like a red flag for autism back then. So I had no idea what to do with my son with special needs. So when I applied for a position in Riverside County, I applied as instruction assistant because I did not know anything about special ed. I did not know about anything about the US public education, but I wanted to help my son, and I wanted to make sure that I understand what interventions there are for him. And then so I was hired then, and then 6 months later, I was hired as a teacher on an emergency credential. And then I had 7 students in my classroom. And for some reason, I don't know, it's probably because I'm a parent, so I understand, like it's second nature for me to manage behaviors. I was really, I would say, successful in handling a lot of the aggressive behaviors of my students, that it led me to believe that maybe this is a path that I really want to pursue. And I didn't want to be confined in a classroom. So I asked Dr. Silva back then, is there a way I could shift to like the IBI program? And because I'm thinking of pursuing, becoming a BCBA. And she said, yeah, definitely. So that's where it all started. I wanted to become a BCBA since then. And I took, my courses at the University of Massachusetts, and then passed the boards, and then now. Yeah.
Wow. That's an amazing story. Well, I know there's so much more to share about your life, but I also know we're really wanting to hear about this book that you wrote recently. And I think that we're going to be posting in the chat or somewhere on Facebook Live the link to the book too, which I encourage everybody to check out. But can you tell us a little bit about the book, Life After Lockdown, the format and structure? And you gave us a little bit about the inspiration behind the book, but what's included in that book?
Yes. So Life After Lockdown is a moment in time book written by 40 individuals. Some are professionals in the field, some are individuals with autism, family members, caregivers. It's a compilation of different stories on how the pandemic affected their lives. Some are sad, a lot, or most of them, are heartwarming. The ones from the professionals in the field offer a lot of strategies on how to, be social again. So a lot of the chapters that you will read in the book are packed with strategies on how to survive during the pandemic. And honestly, like just reading all the chapters, I just like read it in one sitting, because it was just really it's such a good book, that a lot of the strategies that you will find in the book you could use long after the health crisis is over. So although it's life after lockdown, it's about the pandemic, all the things that you will read will apply long after this is over.
Yeah. And is it primarily meant for a specific audience? Is it directed towards parents or professionals, or
Parents, professionals, everyone whose lives are affected with autism would benefit from this book for sure.
Okay, awesome. Well, can you tell us for you how you decided, because you have all of this different background and experience, how did you decide for you what you wanted to focus on and contribute to the book?
So I first got a call from Ruth Price Dash back in spring. And she said, we're thinking of, writing this book. We're going to get different people to contribute different chapters. And I would want you and Edward, because she's very close to the family, I would want you and Edward to contribute as parents. I don't want you to be contributing as a BCBA, but from a perspective of a parent. And like what I said, I cannot say no, that's just me. And so I told Ruth, okay, what is it that you want me to talk about? And she said, just how you handle the pandemic, like how did Ethan do during the pandemic and how you made it work. And so that was in the spring. And I said, I'm sure, since at that time things were starting to reopen, Heather, like there's already vaccination, and we were actually back in school, I think at that time. So I'm assuming the deadline is going to be soon, right? Because, things are opening up. And she said, yeah, we're targeting the summer for the release. And so I went home. I told my husband, we need to write a chapter for Ruth and Rebecca. And he said, what kind of like a chapter? And I said, we could probably just talk about how, we desensitized Ethan with his mask wearing, and how we chose to reintegrate him back to society by choosing to go to stores that are not too crowded. So we're like, okay, let's go to Lowe's, get like a bag of nails, and then come out right away. Just so Ethan is like, not just used to seeing us in the house, but also other people, because we were afraid that he was just going to be like, he was happy during the pandemic because he just likes to be home. But we don't like that. We want him to be exposed to, when we felt that it was safe to be exposed to other people. So we were like choosing big box stores with no people. So that was like basically the first chapter that we wrote, like the first draft that we wrote. And Ruth was like, oh, thanks for that. And then I know she wasn't really happy with the chapter. And then, so she didn't say anything anymore. And then during the summer, we went on this cross-country road trip. And Ruth follows me on Instagram. And after the road trip, she waited till we got home and called me up and said, the chapter that you wrote is very good. Like, it has good tips. However, do you want to redo your chapter and just talk about
and you're like, no, I did it already.
your road trip? I would, if you need help, like I could give you like, pointers. And I said, when do you need it? And that was like towards the end of the summer, like, July. And she said, soon. And then since the cross-country road trip was very fresh in our minds, my husband and I were like, I think we should write about that. So I did, like, it was a team effort. Like I did the first draft. Edward made it pretty, made sure that, it had good, bits and pieces of like our adventure, and then submitted it to Ruth. And Ruth was like, this is amazing. I want this to be part of the book. And she actually posted on her Instagram that our chapter is one of her favorite chapters of all the stories in the book. So that was an honor.
And having read it myself, Awit, I think what's so special about it is that it really shows, it illustrates your like family your family culture, you guys are very tight knit and you really care for each other. And I think that really comes throughout the book chapter. So I
Yeah.
agree. I think it's a very special read. So you mentioned that it's about a cross country trip, but can you tell us where did you go and how long did it take?
So it was 18 days,
Oh my gosh.
over 6,000 miles. We chose not the shortest route to get to our final destination, like our ultimate destination, but we chose to make sure that we pass through states that we're not going to fly to, like Alabama. That's not something that, we would actually
Not on your
be.
bucket list. Yeah.
Yeah, but we wanted to like just cross off as many states as we can. So we went to like all the different, like in the beginning, the first part of the trip, everything was in the southern, state.
Oh, yeah.
And then going home, it was like the northern part of the United States. So
Oh.
yeah.
Well, that is a really long time to be in a car with people. That gives me like a little bit of anxiety thinking about taking my family on a trip that long. So tell me a little bit about your family and how you guys thought through that, knowing that you were going to be on a trip that long.
Yeah. So what really inspired us to go on this road trip was the pandemic. Like we are a family who loves to like be out there,
Mhm.
and we were stuck for almost a year and a half. So my husband was like, and it's always been in our bucket list to like do the cross country
Got
road
it.
trip,
Okay.
because having being born and raised in the Philippines, which is an archipelago, like it's a collection of islands,
Right.
it's impossible for you to drive from one end of the Philippines to the other
Right.
end, because you would need to take like a boat or a barge to you
Go
know
that far.
go that far.
Mhm.
So it always fascinated us that you can go from one end of the United States to the other end just using your car. So we've
Mhm.
always wanted to do that trip. And the pandemic kind of forced us to do it because we were like cooped up, and traveling via airplane abroad was not really an option. We
Mhm.
couldn't even go home to the Philippines during that time because they don't allow non-Filipino citizens to be back home. So we're like, okay, this is the perfect opportunity to go on a cross-country road trip. So my daughter actually is in college. She's a senior over at NYU. Um, when all the universities closed in March, she went home. So during the thick of the pandemic, she was with us, and she went back to New York in January of 2021. And so it was just really Edward, me, and Ethan in a car for up until we reached New Orleans, and Colleen flew to New Orleans because she wanted to see Louisiana. And then we drove her back to New York. So yeah, it was a long trip, but it was, me, Heather, like I'm such a type A that I'm not even kidding. I could show it to the world. Edward and I have like an Excel file of all the different stops that we're getting, the
Oh my
different
goodness.
restaurants, the different hotel rooms. I have all the confirmation number, and it was just organized as much as we can to make it, easier for us and for Ethan as well, because you
Right.
can't really put it up in chance that
Right.
will just
Yeah,
fall into place.
exactly. Exactly. Well, I guess off of that, when you were planning the trip, what was like the most anxiety provoking part of it? Was there something in particular you were worried about, or how did that look?
Working with students with autism, and I'm sure Heather, you can relate. There's just a lot of variables that I cannot
Right.
control when we go
Yeah.
on a trip. The crowd size, the noise level, traffic, all those things that are beyond my control. And with a lot of our students with autism, they're like a ticking time bomb. Like
Mhm.
anything can like trigger them.
Mhm.
So the most anxiety provoking part of the trip was just the unknown, that Ethan might at any given point have a behavior, and
Mhm.
we're not quite sure how to deal with that because we're far from home.
Mhm.
So that was really challenging for me. Like
Mhm.
my anxiety level was through the
Right.
roof,
I would
if you can
assume. Yeah.
imagine.
Yeah. And when you were first thinking about this with Edward, how did you present that to Ethan, and what was his reaction to the idea of going?
It was so cute. So what we have a map of the United States in our living room. You know that map where you put a pin if you've been there. You know, so we have that on our wall. And Edward was showing the map to Ethan, and we're like, okay, we live here. We're gonna go down to Arizona, New Mexico, and then we're gonna cross Texas. And so he was like showing him the map of the United States and the route that we're gonna take. And I kid you not, when Edward was saying, oh, we're going to stay 3 days or 4 days in Texas because it's a very big state. And Ethan was like, no. And we're like, no, it's going to be fun because we're going to see Colleen in New York because he loves his sister. And just the fact, because whenever you ask him, he is mostly nonverbal. Like he could demand for things, like he could request for like Seinfeld and all those orange juice and whatever he likes. But you ask him, where does your sister go to school? And he would go NYU. And so when he was like, no, when we were in, like Edward was telling him like 4 days in Texas, we told him that he was going to go to see the sister in New York. And he started smiling. So that's how we kind of like just, like those anti-based intervention. Okay, this is what we're going to do.
Yeah.
And so it helped.
Wow.
To visually show him where we're going.
Yeah, for sure. Well, that is very brave. My hat's off to you. A road trip feels really overwhelming to me, and I can imagine the additional layer in anticipating what could go wrong. So I think, again, what continues to strike me is I know you see your like mom and professional worlds so separate. But I see you like repeatedly as you talk about things, just bringing in evidence-based practices all the time to what you're doing when you're planning like this place, we're going to go here and we're going to use this kind of support, which I know we'll talk more about, but I just think it's amazing. So do you have a favorite little excerpt from the book that you would you mind reading it to us?
I actually clipped. So it's page 263 of the book. Once again, Ethan surprised us. During the drive, we began to notice that he independently decided to lessen his screen time and devoted most of his energy to looking at the changing scenery from his window. We guessed that he was probably wondering how the desert landscapes of Arizona suddenly changed into the lush greenery of Louisiana. What happened to all the green grass in North Carolina, and how we are suddenly in the middle of all the tall buildings in Manhattan. And what happened to all the trees in Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Kentucky, that all of a sudden he was in the middle of the farmlands in Kansas. And why was it so chilly eating breakfast in the Colorado Rockies? And not even a few hours later, we were lamenting the heat while eating tacos for lunch in the middle of the Utah desert. That's actually my favorite excerpt from the book, because just watching Ethan admire the changing scenery from his window was like an eye opener for me. He like was so present during the trip, while I was perseverating on how long will it take us to get home, when will I do my laundry before we run out of clothes. So that's my favorite part, because just looking at him, Edward and I were like, you know what, he's absorbing everything like right at this moment. We should do. So we were, after like that, we enjoyed, like, look at all the lush trees here in Louisiana. It was actually a rainstorm when we were in New Orleans, and we enjoyed the rain because Ethan was enjoying it. So
yeah, our kids teach us so much in the way of just being present and enjoying. And as you were reading that, I was struck and remembering just this amazing place we live that you talk about, that you're driving like on one route, but it can look so different. And what a lesson to learn from Ethan. Thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
So on kind of the other end of that, what was the most challenging part of the trip? How did you guys go about handling? I mean, maybe it was all perfect. I don't know, but I would assume there were some bumps along the way.
There were.
So tell us a little bit about that and how you handled that.
I think the most challenging for us was waking up at 6 in the morning every day, sometimes 5 in the morning, because we wanted to make sure that we reach our destination, and we were like putting a cap to the driving time that we have. So Edward was like, we're only going to drive for 6 hours, because that way, Ethan can stretch. And when we reach the destination, we could look at the tourist spots and find good restaurants and be in the hotel in time for Ethan's bedtime. So I think it's that time crunch that we always have, like waking up at 6. Thankfully, Ethan is a morning person, that he actually is our alarm clock. Like he would wake us up at 6. But that was, I think, the most challenging, because we want to make sure that it's not just a road trip where we just drive. We actually want to enjoy, the city, what it has to offer. And Ethan loves to eat. So we want to make sure that we find good restaurants for him as well. So yeah, it was just that time component, and just the fact that, what if we hit traffic, then that 6 hour, drive time is gonna, probably go down the drain. Thankfully, it didn't. We were so lucky. There was probably one road closure in Colorado, because I think there was a landslide that closed the bridge. And so it was going to take us about 14 more hours to get to our destination. Thankfully, by the time we got there, they opened the bridge. So we didn't have to worry about that.
And for Ethan, was there any part of it that was, I know that was challenging for all of you. Yeah. Was there any part for him that was challenging? Or I guess another way we could think about that, were there things that you anticipated that would be challenging for him? And how did you handle that with some of the strategies that you have up your sleeve?
So he actually did a lot better than me when we were in New York, because it was so humid. I was so embarrassed for myself, actually, Heather. It was so humid. Sweat was dripping. Like,
oh gosh, yeah.
Clothes. And my daughter wanted to show us this brunch place that she loves, which was like 4 blocks away from the hotel. And like midway through the walk, I was like, is it far? Like, can we just like go back to the hotel? And I was like having a meltdown, and Ethan was like perfectly happy walking. And so I was like, look at that. The person with autism is actually enjoying this, while the mom who's conceptualized this trip is the one complaining. So like I like totally like had a change of like disposition.
Perspective.
Yeah, this is not right. But if there's a place that was really difficult for Ethan during the road trip, it would be San Antonio, Texas.
Texas. He said no. He knew it.
No, actually, we were in Texas for 4 days, because it's such a big state. So we want to make sure that we visit NASA and go to like different places. We went to Marfa, Texas, where that Prada installation for me, for my pictures. But when we were in San Antonio, they have an area called Riverwalk. It's like a row of different hotels and different restaurants situated right in the middle of the river. And so we lived right smack in that Riverwalk place. And to get from our hotel to the restaurant, you have to walk this narrow sidewalk that if any misstep, like wrong misstep, you would fall to the river. So I think it was too overwhelming for Ethan, that there's like people around him, the river is right down below. And it was just noisy. It was just too crowded, that he just froze. Like he refused to move anymore. And we were headed to the Alamo. We wanted to see the Alamo for a picture. And Ethan just froze, and we just waited him out. We told him, we're gonna wait. We took him to a quiet place until because you can tell that he was already like anxious. He was rocking, and he was like verbally stimming. And so we just took him to a quiet place and told him, okay, whenever you're ready, we are. And so when he started walking, we walked with him, and we finally reached the Alamo. He did not want a picture, but Edward and I had a picture in front of it. But that was like I feel that was the only state that he did not like, a city that he did not really enjoy.
He did not enjoy.
Yeah.
Well, there's a question from some people who are watching and listening right now, and they're wondering, from your perspective, were there any places that were particularly autism friendly, the cities or the attractions that you went to?
There were a lot, honestly. That's the thing with traveling. In the past, honestly, I was always had blinders because I knew that they were staring at Ethan. Because you can tell that he really has his autism is he's very severely impacted with his autism.
Mhm.
So I knew that some people would be judgy and would be like,
Yeah.
looking and staring. But honestly, we did not feel that at all. Even in Louisiana, the jazz bar, they were like, we would warn them that he has autism, so he would cover his ears, and they would even give him like earbuds to like cover his
Oh,
ears. So
yeah.
I haven't really seen a place wherein we felt like we were being discriminated. All of the places that we visited, because I think just through planning alone, we knew that they were autism friendly. We visited the good thing with the pandemic is a lot of the restaurants were outside because they were
Oh,
not
right.
indoors.
Yeah.
So that was already autism friendly for us because we were outdoors and it wasn't crowded at all. So yeah, all of the places that we visited were autism friendly. We went to NASA in Houston, and they were very accommodating with all our needs.
Um, so which one, I know we were saying what he didn't enjoy. Was there a state that he did really love in contrast to that?
So he did, like what I was saying, he's always like in the moment, like he's
Yeah.
enjoying what's present, what's happening. He enjoyed all the states actually, but what he enjoyed the most, Heather, was actually staying in different hotel rooms every
Oh,
day. Like he
yeah.
would get excited. As soon as we checked in, he would be like waiting by the door, making sure we open it. He would check the bathroom, he would check the closet space, he would check the view. So he actually enjoyed being in hotel rooms more than being in different states. But I know that he enjoyed New York for sure because he got
And
to
he got to
see,
see his
yeah,
sister.
he got
Okay.
to see where NYU is because we toured him around like just driving, and that's where
Yeah.
Colleen goes to school. And so he
Yeah.
had a big smile on his face.
Oh, that's special. It sounds like they have such a sweet relationship.
They do.
So another question coming from the group watching, you talked about your itinerary and your spreadsheet. Did you happen to put a copy of that into the book?
No, but I am more than willing to email it to whoever is requesting for that because
Okay, all
I'm
right.
so proud of that workbook. There's a workbook for just the hotels and workbook for all the different restaurants that we're going to visit and like the time frame that we're going to be there. It was such it was funny to actually write that, but it was a lifesaver for my
I was
husband.
gonna say, I'm sure though it scaffolded. I mean, everything you're sharing about sounds like he was so successful, and I'm assuming that so much of that is attributable to that you set him up for success. You had
Yes,
everything
we
really
did
well
not,
organized.
for sure, we did not leave anything to chance, Heather.
Right,
It's for
right.
our sanity as well.
Right. Well, I'm sure there's been experiences you've had in past where that didn't go so well. So you knew what you needed to do and you put
Right.
that into place. Well, so 3 weeks in a car, I can imagine I have an 8 and 11-year-old, and 3 weeks in the car may not look so beautiful. So, so how did you keep him entertained for 3 weeks in the back seat of a car going across all of the United States?
So we actually, you know how a lot of our students with autism are obsessed with like Thomas the Train or
Yeah.
Pokemon. Ethan is different. Like he's obsessed with Seinfeld, that
Well,
90s
that's
sitcom.
entertaining.
And so we downloaded a lot of the Seinfeld episodes on his iPad. We made sure that we like have a lot of reinforcers in the car, a lot of like food reinforcers. He's into orange juice, so we made sure that everywhere we go, we would like stop in a grocery store so we could pick his orange juice. And just a lot of music. Ethan is into like soft rock, so we would play like yacht rock radio on the radio in the car. So there was just a lot of reinforcers and a lot of like pre-planning that took place, a lot of visual supports to help him survive the 3 weeks in the road with us.
Well, on that note, in the end, I think you put some tips for those who might be considering going on a road trip. So can you share some about those tips slash evidence-based practices that you're
Yeah,
using?
it's funny you mentioned that because I was telling my husband, this is ABI, this is antecedent-based intervention. We're going to have to make him have some sense of choice when it comes to his outfit, just so he, have some sense of control. So we made sure that in the trunk, we had 3 sets of luggages. One was served as the hamper. The other one served as, where we keep all the fresh clothes. And one was like a carry-on size luggage that we just bring to the hotel room so we don't have to carry those big luggages. And so at the beginning of each trip, before we even check in, Ethan would actually choose his outfit of choice for the next day. Because Ethan is such a fashion guy, like he wants to choose, like you choose this outfit and he will change like the in a minute. So we just made sure that he had a choice all the time. And we made sure that there's a lot of reinforcers available for him, a lot of visual supports. We gave him, like, we would warn him ahead of time, okay, this is the next destination. This is where we're going. This is where the hotel will be. This is what your room would look like. That way he just has like an understanding of what to expect. There's no surprises for Ethan. So yeah, so a lot of
That's amazing, the amount of planning time that you put into that. I mean, first of all, I would love to go on a road trip with you because if somebody provided me choice in my outfits and put it in the trunk in a nicely organized system, that would be amazing. But I can just imagine the amount of time that you had to take to get ready for the trip.
Right. But the reinforcer, I swear, it's that Seinfeld as well. Like having Seinfeld on his iPad was such a lifesaver.
Yeah, for sure. Wow. Well, you mentioned that until the last minute, you were like, even though you'd done all these things, you were still a little bit nervous that this whole thing could just burn up. So what was your plan? I wouldn't imagine you're somebody who would go in without a plan. So
We did have a plan.
Did you have a plan B if they went awry?
We did. You know what, Ethan's used to traveling, but not like, almost a month long on the road.
Right.
That's brand new to him. So we were not sure if he's gonna just not want to ride a car anymore, because that's a possibility. We knew that that might happen. So my husband and I are not chess players, but we like to plan 10 steps ahead. So the plan was, just in case Ethan starts banging his head and our car window starts like smashing to pieces, or he just refuses to get out of the car or ride a car, the plan B was for Edward and him to fly back to California, and I will just drive home by myself and take the shortest route this time, Heather. Okay. Not the scenic one, but the shortest one.
Right.
Thankfully, it didn't have to happen.
Yeah.
Ethan just enjoyed the trip. So we're grateful for that.
And I know you've touched on this a little bit already, but did you feel like you at some point were able to just settle in and enjoy, or was that thought of this could go awry, everything you just described, like always right here on your mind as you were going?
I was anxious up until Louisiana, for sure. So almost like 3/4 of our trip to go into the east. And then when I saw Ethan looking out the window, it was a rainstorm and he was just enjoying it. And it just made me realize, you know what, you just enjoy the moment too. You stop worrying.
Right.
That was when I just like, you know what, I'm just going to enjoy this. I'm not going to stress about anything at all. We're almost halfway through the United States,
right.
And there's no mishaps or whatever, no major meltdowns. So I think I could actually let my guard down and enjoy myself. So so there was a moment when I just surrendered, and this is going to be fine.
Well, and what an amazing thing to share with parents and professionals, to know, like, even when something seems scary and you could think of all the potential ways that it could go wrong, that you did it, you planned for it, you used evidence-based practices, and that not only did it work, but it also was all the memories, that it was enjoyable, and that you learned something from your own kiddo in the process. It's amazing. Sure. Well, some comments that came across is one, Awit, you're amazing. Your stories are so interesting and helpful. And I like this next one. I think you should travel all the time, Jack. and travel blog and make a travel blog called Travels with Ethan. I know there are many families who would benefit from learning from you about strategies to help it be most enjoyable to travel with their autistic family member. And it sounds like Ethan would be living his best life. You have a new job in your spare time.
I contemplated, I was like, maybe I should have a YouTube channel.
You should.
But
I fully
I'm like,
support
no,
it.
I barely have time to just like sit down. So yeah, maybe
Well,
when I retire.
well, speaking of that, do you have plans? Do you have next steps in mind, things you might do for adventures with him?
Yeah, so maybe we could backtrack, Heather, because we talked about this. Like, what other places have we taken Ethan?
Yeah, what other travel things have
Yeah,
you guys
so
done?
we feel that Ethan is probably one of the most traveled individuals with autism. I feel like maybe I'm wrong, but he has been to Europe. He's been to Paris. He's
Oh,
been to
wow.
London. We actually watched the London Olympics, and he like watched
In
volleyball
person in London.
in person in
Wow.
London when he was younger. And then we went to Russia. We went to he's been all over Asia. The last country that he visited before the pandemic was Vietnam, and he enjoyed that. Hong Kong, Singapore. He's been to the Caribbean. He has been everywhere. However, like the part that he enjoys about those travels is the fact that we ride the airplane, because he loves the airplane. And you know what
Oh.
he loves about the airplane, Heather? It's the bathroom. Like he would just pretend that he needs to go potty all the time because he wants that cramped space in
Oh,
the
is that what it is? Is like the enclosure is
it
what's
was being enclosed in like a small space that was
smaller?
really comforting for him. So we didn't have that in a car. So even though he is used to traveling long distances, it was a different set of, it's different being stuck in a car for 6 or more hours.
Right.
So yeah, but he loves to travel. So I think we're blessed that way, that we did not make it a hindrance that he has autism, that he's just going to be home, and just be content with, just
Right.
being,
Being there all the time.
being there all the time. We tried to expose him as young as he was to traveling. So I think that helped with this road trip that we had.
Yeah. And a question came in, and I'm curious about too. The first time you were going to one of these places as a mom of a kiddo with autism, what did you do to plan for like a long air travel, and what tips do you have for families who are thinking about doing that for the first time?
The thing is, we were based in the Philippines, and just the flight to the Philippines alone is 14 hours. So
Oh my
Ethan
gosh,
had like a long history of learned behavior, that it's a long trip where we go
this
home.
is just what we do. Yeah.
This is what we do. This is where we live. It's so far away. So he kind of learned that. But I'm the first one to tell you that it's not always perfect. When we were in London, I think for the Olympics, like he had a meltdown, like he had like a big tantrum, riding the underground, because he was just tired. So he like flopped to the ground. I thought he was gonna fall off the ledge.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah, so it was like really scary. And we were
Mhm.
going to, I think we were gonna visit the Buckingham Palace, and he just like flopped to the ground and did not want to move anymore.
Mhm.
So as a parent with a moderate to severe child with autism traveling to foreign countries, I am the first one to tell you it's not perfect all the time. I thought he was going to jump off the river when we were doing a
Yeah.
tour, I think in Ukraine or something. And but we persevered. We just, waited out. We give him all those visual supports that he needs. We show him a social story. We show him like different videos to just redirect him. And for the most part, I would say 90% it works, because otherwise we wouldn't be encouraged to still, continue to travel with him
Mhm.
if we have not been successful. So it just takes a lot of effort and just a lot of conviction that your child can do wonderful things if you just let him.
And it's worth
Yeah.
persevering to get to the other side.
Yeah.
With specifics to going on an airplane, if you were to talk to another parent of a child with autism, is there anything in particular you would advise them of when planning a long airplane trip?
What has worked with us was always take a an airplane trip that is close to the bedtime of Ethan.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So we would always like choose a nighttime flight. That way it's just his body clock that he would sleep throughout the flight. And usually he sleeps through the night, like 8 hours. So if it's a long haul trip, like let's say it's a 12-hour trip, 3/4 of the trip he's sleeping because that's his bedtime.
Right.
So that's my greatest, I think that's the one of the most important tips that I have. If you could plan a trip and take a plane ride that's in the evening time, it might help with having
Right.
them sleep throughout the flight.
That
And
makes
just have a lot of reinforcers, a lot of like just planning ahead and just giving choices. I think the power of choice is so underrated for our students with autism, because if they know that they have some sense of control, they tend to behave better. So I always like offer choices to Ethan whenever we travel.
Those are great tips. Thank you for sharing that. So then going back to the original question that I brought up, since you've gone all these places, which is amazing, what's next on your bucket list for you and your family? What adventures lie ahead?
It would depend on who you ask, actually.
Okay.
So if you ask Edward, his bucket list is for Ethan to be the first autistic individual to go to space.
I was wondering if that was going to be the end of your sentence.
No,
Wow.
he's like, I want Ethan to be the first one to ride that Jeff Bezos or that
Oh my gosh.
rocket.
I mean, that's a good goal.
Ethan would be the first autistic in space. So that's Edward's bucket list for Ethan.
Does he have a plan for that? To plan a plan to execute that?
It's a lot cheaper because right now it's beyond our budget.
Okay, yeah, I would imagine.
My kidney and Edward and Ethan's as well, and Colleen's. But realistically, we've always wanted to visit Brazil, but probably not anytime soon, with still like the pandemic raging over there.
Yeah.
But that's all. Ethan loves the beach. So anywhere with water, he would really love that.
Okay. Well, I think like you mentioned and someone else mentioned, we would love a blog or a YouTube channel if you make it happen. Keep us posted on how that goes.
I'll think about that.
Space or Brazil, really. So I know we're kind of reaching the end of our time already. It goes so fast. I just love talking with you, Awit, and learning about your story.
And Heather, we were so worried that we were not going to fill that hour.
I know. We have lots to say.
We do.
So just to kind of close us up, if there's something that you learned from this road trip, what was it, and what words of wisdom would you give to families are coming to my mind most, but really anyone who's listening or who has the opportunity to watch this later as they're thinking about their travels and what's next for them?
Like I think I mentioned it earlier, just watching Ethan during the entire trip made me realize that he really did not care for our destination. He did not really care, oh, are we going to visit New York? What are we going to do in New York? He was just enjoying the moment. Like he was being present. He was just happy being in a new hotel room every single day. And so if there's a takeaway from the 18-day, 6,000-mile trip that we did, is to be mindful and to be present. And as cliche as this may sound, Heather, Ethan taught us that it's true what they say. It's not about the destination, it's about the journey. And it's through like looking through the eyes of an individual with autism. It just made me realize that saying is so true. And when I was talking to my husband before I left for work this morning, I said, today's the day that they're going to interview me. And what would you want me to share to everybody who would be watching? And he said, make sure you include this because this is really important, that we just have to remember to give our children a chance, no matter the severity of their autism or their disability, that, you know, they might surprise us. Just take them out in the world and just, you know, be courageous. Just, you know, think of the best case scenario at all times. Do not be discouraged because it's really, you know, it's really up to us to expose our children with special needs to the world out there. And who knows, they might surprise us, because honestly, like there were a lot of moments wherein I would have already given up taking Ethan to places, because like at Trader Joe's, he was having like a big tantrum over there, and if it was just me, I was like, I'm not never going back to Trader Joe's again. They might have a picture of me and Ethan not allowed inside the store. But we never gave up. We always persevered. We wanted to make sure that his autism will not hinder him to enjoy what other children are enjoying, so just go out there, enjoy what we have, and be present, and just be always have the best interest for our children, not let our fears take over.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. Well, I feel so honored that you let us hear your story, Awit, not only of the road trip that you took, but just your whole life. And I think you and your husband are an amazing team, and all that you have continued. Like you said, the word persevere, it's not always easy, but you've given him such a great life and opportunities and things to see. So my hat's off to you. You're an amazing woman and professional and mom. So thank you for telling your story today.
Thank you for the opportunity. I wasn't sure I was gonna share, anything interesting, but you made it interesting, Heather. So
I think your life is very interesting. So thank you for sharing it with everybody. If people did want to read this book, can you tell us where they might be able to find it? Is in lots of spots?
It's available on Amazon, and I gave Gavin the link, so hopefully it's on the chat where they could purchase it. It's on Amazon, and it's less than $20. So please grab a copy, because it's something that you will really cherish and would make your life like you would just be thankful for all the blessings that you have, especially for this Thanksgiving. I think it's a good reminder that there's always something to be grateful for.
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to buy myself a copy and have you sign it. And maybe at our next summit, it'll be one of the things that we can give away to our lucky winners when we're there. But thank you so much. And thanks for everybody who's listening, and have a wonderful Thanksgiving. Thanks for ending with that message of gratitude. We're grateful you're here. We're grateful for Ethan, and we can't wait to hear what comes next for you and your family.
Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Thanksgiving.